Speaking is the action of conveying information or expressing one's thoughts and feelings in spoken language. Speaking is the delivery of language through the mouth. And to speak, we create sounds using many parts of our body, including the lungs, vocal tract, vocal cords, tongue, teeth, and lips. This vocalized form of language usually requires at least one listener. When two or more people speak or talk to each other, the conversation is called a dialogue. Speech can now flow naturally from one person to another in the form of dialogue, and it can also be planned and rehearsed, as in the delivery of a speech or presentation. Of course, some people talk to themselves, and in fact, some English learners practice speaking standing alone in front of a mirror. Speaking can be formal or informal. Informal speaking is typically used with family and friends or people you know well. Formal speaking, on the other hand, occurs in businesses or academic situations or when meeting people for the first time. Speaking is probably the language skill that most language learners wish to perfect as soon as possible. It used to be the only language skill that was difficult to practice online. This is no longer the case, wherein English learners can practice speaking online using voice or video chat and services like Skype. They can also record and upload their voice for other people to listen to.
I will be presenting the different methodologies in speaking. Number 1 is the grammar translation method. This method focuses on studying written texts and translating them into the student's home language. It also emphasizes on learning grammar than to give attention to the pronunciation and spoken language. The major strategies implemented in GTM class are translating a literary passage, reading comprehensive questions, finding the antonyms, synonyms of the words, cognates, deductive application of rules, filling in the blanks, memorizing vocabulary, and arranging words in simple sentences and compositions. Next is the audiolingual method. This method derived from a behaviorist paradigm which focuses on providing a stimulus to the student's response. The correct of student respond will be praised in order to strengthen the correct of language use and of course to reinforce discipline in learning. This method minimizes the explanations of grammar and emphasizes on repetition. Some basic strategies of this method can be found in some activities such as memorizing the dialogue, peer dialogue practicing, backward build-up drill, and repetition drill. Next is the communicative approach. This method is based on the theory of language acquisition that pointed out to the language use rather than the study of grammar. It emphasizes on creating situations where the students have more opportunities to say something, just like as children do in their childhood. The strategies used in this method are authentic material, scrabbled sentence, language games, picture strip story, and role play. Next is the PPP, or the presentation, practice, and production. This method might be similar to the audiolingual through the use of pictures and focus learning. It can also be implemented through the presentation and demonstration. The practice involves students using the target language in a controlled way. This might be implemented through drills, controlled written and speaking activities, and repetition. Production involves the students use the target language in the sentences. Next is the task-based learning. In this method, the lecturer prepares a task for students to do individually or in a group on a subject or a topic that has not been studied yet in the classroom, or the topic has been studied previously to strengthen their comprehension on the topic. Next is the ESA, or Engage, Study, and Activate. Engage refers to the getting students' attention or interest and involving them in learning. This study involves focusing on a language point. It could be grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, or how a written text is organized. Activating refers to having students use the language in a reality context that is as close to real life as possible. And the last one is the lexical approach. This method derived from the principle that grammar and vocabulary cannot be strictly separated, as is often the case in traditional teaching methods. A further notion is that language is made up of lexical items using grammar to support them rather than being made up of grammar structures incorporating lexis. In brief, a lecturer must comprehend some teaching methods to implement in their class in order to reach the objective of learning to speak as the goal of oral interaction competency and to help students become functional in English or to use it spontaneously, naturally, and effectively in day-to-day class life.
How to improve students' speaking skills. Oral language is one of the most important skills your students can master, both for social and academic success. Learners use these skills throughout the day to process and deliver instructions, make requests, ask questions, receive new information, and interact with peers. Here are some suggestions and techniques which are very helpful for developing children's oral skills. Number 1, encourage conversation. Every social interaction gives students a new opportunity to practice language. Some of your students might need a little guidance from you to engage in conversations, so spark interactions whenever you can. Ask questions, rephrase the students' answers, and give prompts that encourage oral conversations to continue. Number 2, model syntactic structure. Your students may not use complete oral syntax in informal speech, but encourage them to do so when they're in the classroom. When a student uses fragmented syntax, model complete syntax back to them. This builds oral language skills and gives students practice in a skill necessary for their mastering written language. Learners should be given plenty of opportunities to talk at a time that has been allocated to communicate in the classroom. Pollard 2008 suggests 80% of the instructional time given to students to communicate and 20% in the time for the teachers to speak. Participation in class discussion is not dominated by only minority talkative students, but all students have the same opportunity to speak and contributions are distributed fairly. Number 3, choosing an interested and new topic of learning so as to motivate students to contribute in achieving the learning objectives. Number 3, question to boost comprehension. Asking questions before and after reading assignment not only helps sharpen oral language skills, it also helps students think about what they are reading and absorb information from the words. You might try the following strategies to facilitate reading comprehension. If there's an introduction to the story or passage, ask students to read it and answer purpose-setting questions. Where does the story begin? What kind of story or article is this? Why do you think so? Ask the students to predict outcomes. What will happen? How do you know? After the reading, ask the students to reveal whether their predictions were correct and identify where the ending or conclusion begins. Have students summarize the passage. Who were the characters? What was the plot? What was the outcome? What was the main idea? What were the supporting details? Never assume students understood your instructional talk. You use oral language every day to teach, but some students may not be getting your message. In this chart from Bringer and Wolf's book, Beverly Wolf shares some examples of how students in her classroom misinterpreted sentences delivered orally. Be aware of the potential disconnect between what you say and what your students hear. Go over your message and present it in multiple ways to be sure all students understand.
Hi everyone, I am Rally Inviernes, and for today, I will be discussing the 4 elements of speaking skills. Every one of us desires to speak a language well and to have an excellent speaking skill. This way, we could speak confidently and verbally communicate effectively. So, to do this, I have here two of the four elements of speaking skills which we are required to know in order to become a good and competent speaker. The four elements are pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, and fluency. First, let us have pronunciation. Pronunciation is the way we produce clearer language and to correctly pronounce words when speaking. This is to make sure that you sound clear so your audience could easily and quickly follow and understand what you are trying to convey. In fact, this is a complex area with aspects that can be practiced such as rhythm, word and sentence stress, intonation, and phrasing. Here, a good way to improve and practice our pronunciation is to simply listen to how someone with good pronunciation speaks. Imitate what you are hearing as closely as possible. Another is to pay attention to your intonation and stress through reading poems and speeches and even singing aloud. You may also practice alone and listen to yourself while standing in front of a mirror. Second, we have grammar. To define grammar, this is a systematic way of accounting for the speaker's knowledge of the language. This also refers to the structure of the language, including their correct and proper forms of words. Many of you may think that this is only needed in written language, but it's not, because grammar also matters in speaking. Just like in writing, using an incorrect grammar when speaking may also lead to misinterpretation or unclear message. With proper grammar, you may be able to develop effective communication skills. The speaker may deliver his or her message in a way that the audience will recognize and understand. Actually, a poor usage of grammar may also give a negative impression to some. However, there are really circumstances that speakers do not have perfect grammar. They commit few mistakes, and that really happens to anyone.
I know that many of us had a point in our lives where we cannot say what we want to say because we simply don't know the words or we lack of words to say. However, I have been in that point for how many times already? Under vocabulary, it is said by many that the power of words is one of the keys to success in communicating. Vocabulary is an important thing in language, especially in speaking. In fact, this is known to be the building block of language learning. Having a large vocabulary gives a speaker an advantage to easily express their ideas, even their thoughts and feelings, as they, the knowledge to what are the meanings of the words, how they are spelt and pronounced. Here, the more words you know, the stronger your speaking skill is. For many, the best way to grow your vocabulary is to read English writings and make a note of the new words you have encountered. Fluency is defined as the ability to speak communicatively, fluently, and accurately in a given language. This usually refers to how you express oral language freely without interruption. Here, the speaker may be able to speak fluently and with ease, where you can see that there is a clear connection between each point. With fluency, they can deliver their speech continuously without their audience or listener experiencing difficulty in comprehending to what they are trying to say. In fact, the more fluent you are, the more interesting and insightful speech or conversations you can have. Moreover, this element undeniably helps a speaker to be comfortable and confident while speaking the language.
Why is speaking still an issue for thousands of students? This question reminds me of a joke about how some individuals would prefer to be in a coffin than give a eulogy at a funeral. Back in high school, that individual would have undoubtedly been me. As a student, I was always frightened of performing on stage. Feeling uncomfortable, sweating, shivering hands, and quivering voice were all common for me in high school. And 4 years after, I discovered I had public speaking anxiety, or glossophobia as it is commonly known. It is critical to overcome your fear of public speaking so that it does not negatively impact your career and personal life in the future. So, here are some issues to consider in learning and enhancing one's speaking skills. Lack of vocabulary. This is the first barrier that students confront when speaking a foreign language. A lack of vocabulary occurs when children are unable to construct sentences due to a lack of words. Similarly, vocabulary is an essential component of learning English. Students who lack vocabulary will have a negative influence on themselves when they want to interact and become less confident. Vocabulary is essential since it is the foundation of all language. I repeat, vocabulary is essential since it is the foundation of all language. It is the basic material from which we may express our thoughts and ideas, share information, comprehend others, and develop personal relationships. When you have a wider vocabulary in your target language, it also helps to support all four language skills, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. As Paul Nation 2015 noted in his paper on vocabulary learning, vocabulary is not an end in itself. A rich vocabulary makes the skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing easier to perform. Second is speaking anxiety. Speaking anxiety is defined as a discomfort, worry, or feeling of dread caused by an individual's impression of learning or using a second language. It is a statement of fear, a sense of disturbance, and an emotional conflict during a specific oral performance situation. Many students have language anxiety or speaking anxiety for a variety of reasons. For example, students would forget what they wanted to say due to nervousness, or students fear of making a mistake when speaking in English, and or students fear of being laughed at by their peers. Next one is lack of confidence. Many of us have found ourselves in situations where we had have to speak and felt the fear. The students are hesitant to speak because they believe their English is inadequate, so they remain silent. Believe it or not, a lack of confidence may have a significant impact on a student's academic performance. It will keep them in their comfort zones, where they feel safe and have a little risk of failing. The learners prefer to remain silent, while other learners demonstrate that they are speaking with a student who lacks confidence. Learners do not feel it if feasible to gain fluency or mastery of vocabulary. This lack of confidence prevents individuals from honing their effective communication skills.
Here are further issues in speaking. Lack of motivation. Lack of motivation is a problem in which students are unwilling to grow in order to attain something. Not every student in the English speaking class has the courage to speak. Students must be motivated to study a language, especially while communicating in English. Motivation is essential for students' success in language acquisition. Students lack confidence because they are unmotivated. Motivation can encourage someone to finish a course of study, and motivation is also a strong desire to do something. There is nothing to say one of the issues that the student struggles with was speaking in front of other students, that they were afraid of making errors and losing face in front of their instructor and peers. Speaking in front of others needs confidence and motivation from inside and beyond, such as cheerful environment in the conversation and engaging themes. And another reason is that students outperform and practically intimidate others due to their superior abilities. Many students have strong writing skills in English, but when it comes to communicating in English, they struggle to explain themselves vocally, and they are worried of expressing anything incorrect, unclear, especially because some pupils were unfamiliar with the subject. Students keep using their L1. Another issue was that students performed classroom work in their native language rather than English. This may happen if they needed to express something significant and utilize the language they are most familiar with, and they had difficulties stating things in English, and they believe that if they do not want to look foolish in front of their peers, they should utilize their native language so that others can understand them. Interaction in the classroom is a positive relationship among classroom participants and is also essential for creating a positive learning environment. Interaction between students and teachers includes questioning and answering and help in language acquisition and problem solving. Interaction between students and teachers that is not effectively formed because a source of restraint in their speaking activity. When students encounter challenges in the learning acquisition, they are hesitant to share their experiences or seek assistance from the teacher. Classroom engagement covers how teachers provide students opportunities to demonstrate their language and personalities.
As mentioned by Daniel, the first issue would be the lack of vocabulary. Of course, when you only know a few words, you can express yourself clearly in English. So you resort to Taglish. And also, you do not have the courage to speak when your vocabulary is low. Vocabulary helps you speak and understand the context of the message. For instance, suppose you are a presidential candidate and you had an interview with someone who asked you how different you will be as a president. When your vocabulary is low, you will never understand the context, and if you do not know the context, you will say words that are not relevant to the question. What do learners have to do to overcome this issue? First, find an interesting book and read it aloud. Then, while you are reading, record yourself, because recording your voice will help you see what to improve. You might ask, how can I see if I made a mistake or not in pronouncing the word? Well, search the word on Google for the pronunciation. You can also search for it on YouTube for you to see the proper pronunciation and the meaning of a word. Second, read short stories online that captures your attention. While watching, list the words and phrases coming from the characters in the story. Next issue is anxiety. To overcome anxiety, you need to work on your breath. Sometimes when speaking, we also tend to rumble. Working on your breathing will help you learn how to pace yourself in your speech, so you don't rumble or speed through at a pace your audience can keep up with. When you focus on your breathing, your voice will have more resonance and you will relax. If you lose track of what you're saying or start to feel nervous and your mind goes blank, it may seem like you have been silent for an eternity. In reality, it's probably only a few seconds, even if it's longer. Yes, even if it's longer. It's likely your audience would mind a pause to consider what you have been saying.
Another issue on speaking includes lack of confidence. Here's how to overcome this. Slow down. Most of the best public speakers in English speak slowly. Speaking slower makes you sound more confident and trustworthy. It will also have an impact on how you feel, as well as making you feel more confident. It gives you a bit of time to think about what you are going to say next. The last issue is motivation, and here's how to overcome it. One of the biggest barriers to putting new sentence structures and vocabulary into action is the fear of getting it wrong. Even though mistakes are a natural and important part of learning, it can be easy to feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. So, to overcome that fear, put yourself in a situation where you know you are wrong. For example, go into a hardware store and ask if they sell food. It's a difficult thing to do, but finding out that people are usually polite and friendly, even when you make an obvious mistake, is an important realization to make. Number 1. Be encouraged. Your English is probably better than you think it is. Unfortunately, a lot of English learners have a very negative view on their English skills. Do you ever find yourself saying or thinking things like, my English is probably full of mistakes. I'm afraid to speak because other people might not understand me. I've been studying for years, but my English is still bad. I can tell you honestly, your English is probably better than you imagine. As the teacher here at Espresso English, I've interacted with thousands of students. I correct hundreds of homework assignments from students in my course. So I can say with confidence that most of you are doing great in English. Yes, of course, there is room to improve, but you already have good English skills, and I can understand your speaking and writing. That's a really big accomplishment. So, if you tend to have a low opinion of your English, try to eliminate those negative thoughts by focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do yet. 2. Never compare your English skills to others. One reason that many English learners have a low opinion of their skills is that they're comparing themselves to native English speakers or other learners who have reached fluency. If you observe that your English is not as good as other people's, you start to bad about yourself, imperfect, inferior, etc. Don't compare. It's not fair. Native English speaking adults have had 20 years of being immersed in English practically 24 hours a day. We've watched thousands of hours of TV in English. We've had years and years of instruction in school with tons of books in English and participated in millions of conversations in English. That's a huge advantage. If you had all that experience,
you'd be a native speaker too. So, comparing yourself as an English learner to a native English speaker doesn't make sense. Learning a language later in life is a different experience and can't be compared to being raised as a native speaker since birth. You should also avoid comparing yourself to other English learners. The fact is that everyone is different. Some people naturally learn faster. Some people naturally learn more slowly. Some people have invested more time in studying, and other people have studied on and off. Some learners have had excellent teachers. Other learners have had trouble finding a good teacher or method. Don't compare your English skills to anyone else's. Just focus on your individual progress.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about the power of speaking. If you're like most people, you probably don't like speaking. You may even be afraid of public speaking. But there are some advantages of being proficient at speaking that can help you in both your professional and personal life. The first advantage of speaking is that speaking builds confidence. Speaking can significantly boost one's confidence. Overcoming the fears and insecurities that accompany speaking is empowering. Your confidence level will grow as you go from speaking to small group of people up to large audiences. This will benefit you not just on stage but in everyday life as well, whether it be in a meeting or on a date. While the nervousness that comes with speaking won't entirely disappear, it will teach you how to deal with your fears and turn your weaknesses into strength. The second advantage is speaking enhances critical thinking skills. Speaking requires a great deal of careful thought. It's not enough to have a message. You also need to figure out how to tailor the message to fit the needs of your audience. The third one is speaking provides opportunity, especially in career advancement. When you are a good speaker, you will be more comfortable in interviews. It can also help you stand out at work. You'll learn to speak up in meetings to promote your ideas and to present yourself as a professional. The fourth one is speaking keeps us healthy. The inability to communicate our emotions is frustrating and stressful. Often it can add to an already tense situation. If you can express yourself, you can voice your emotion in a reasonable way. Lastly, speaking makes us a better listener. Speaking actually teaches you to become a better listener. When you attend conferences, you hear several different types of speeches about a wide variety of topics from people who may be very different from you. This will possibly build your listening and note-taking ability. Speaking well is very important, and there is a circular relationship between speaking and listening. Good speakers tend to be better listeners and vice versa. Our speaking abilities have some very important outcomes and advantages. Speaking allows you to speak your mind about topics that excite you. It gives you the chance to share your ideas with the world and to gain and trust yourself in difficult times. It is time to stop letting your anxiety run the show and take the reins of the opportunities that come your way.